Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today with us at Life Group Academy. Today it's my pleasure to introduce you Dr. Carmen Rubio, that is my colleague, my friend, my mentor, and she's going to develop a little bit more about the non-invasive PGT-A or Embrace, what we call. So, Carmen, please, could you tell us how are we now regarding this non-invasive test?
Okay, for sure. Happy to tell you that we have done a lot of developments in the last years. As you know, we started with research in this project more than 6 years ago, and we started to offer this as a clinical service 3 years ago. I'm glad to say how much we have learned during these 3 years. Thank you to all the IVF labs that have been really supporting us, giving a lot of feedback. So I think that we are now in a mature moment in which we can offer a test that is really helping patients to prioritize embryos for transfer.
Okay. And well, we are talking about non-invasive PGT-A. And do you think that this could be like something that we are going to remove the PGT-A and we are going to do only the non-invasive? What can you see this test in the field in the next years?
Well, this is a question that we receive many times, if we are ready now to move from non-invasive for all the PGT-A cases. And I think this is something that the customers, that you from the IVF clinics are telling us. We are feeling comfortable now with the concordance rates that we have with the trophectomy biopsy and with the inner cell mass. We have really very good concordance rate with the inner cell mass. We are collecting and doing follow-up of the clinical outcomes of our IVF centers working with us. And we have seen in some centers how they have started to shift from PGT-A to non-invasive. But this is different in different countries, in different labs. I could say that in 2-3 years, many IVF clinics will move towards more non-invasive and less PGT-A. What I could say now is that the two technologies are going to coexist for a time. Some clinics decide to do PGT-A in specific indications with higher risk, and they do the non-invasive in milder indications. So this is how this is working, but we have started to observe this shift to higher adoption of the non-invasive in some clinics.
Okay, thank you. I do know that there's a barrier, clear barrier there from many labs saying that go to day 6 of development of the embryo. So they are kind of scared. So what can we do with this?
Well, I think this is very clear. And me as an embryologist years ago, for sure, this is the big question, because we don't want to damage our embryos and we don't want to expose them to an increased risk. So it's very normal, I would say, to have this concern when we explain that we need to grow the embryos to day 6. We always say it's early day 6. And the truth is that after these 3 years, with many customers really using the test, we have a very good feedback. We have also reports that if you do PGT-A, if you have a chromosomally normal embryo, the day of the embryo is not so important, because the important thing is to have a euploid embryo or an embryo with a higher probability of being euploid. So we are doing the follow-up of how the embryos are on day 5, on day 6. We are collecting the clinical data, and the results are really very supportive. Said that, we still need to learn more, and it's perfect if we can couple time-lapse embryoscope together with Embrace, because this is going to allow us really to refine the test in the same way that embryoscopes have helped a lot to PGT-A, to perfectly understand when is the right moment to do the biopsy. The same thing we think is going to be applied to the non-invasive. So we think that the couple of the two techniques, we are going to learn a lot placing the two techniques together.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. So we are a genomics part of Life Group. We have in our DNA research, basic research, go to the translation to the clinic. And we started doing research more than 6 years ago. So what's going on now regarding the analysis of the culture media?
Okay, well, many things going on. Many things going on, because as you can imagine, when there is something new, it's very exciting because there are so many things to be done. So I think we have done what we needed to do to develop a test. So we have done the proper studies, validation studies, the concordant study. We have now finished our multicenter study in which we have collected more than 2,000 samples of culture media compared with the trophectoden biopsy. We have clinical outcomes when we have abnormal medium compared when we have normal medium. We can see how we have better results, lower miscarriage rates when we have a euploid trophectoden biopsy and a euploid culture media. So we have done these studies, but for sure we need to do RCT studies. So we have an ongoing RCT study, morphology versus non-invasive, and also inside this study we have a non-selection study, like the famous non-selection studies apply to our field. So we are going to have blinded transfer and doing the clinical follow-up to see how the results of the media correlate with live birth, because at the end we want to have a tool to predict not just an euploidy or aneuploidy. We need to have a tool to predict a safe baby at home. And basic research, we love also to do a little of basic research just to really to understand a little more about the origin of the cell-free DNA, the mechanism. So we have a very nice collaboration with Nicolas Placha and UPenn University doing live imaging, like labeling the nucleus and trying to understand the mechanisms, also in collaboration with Denis Sakas and Carlos Simon Foundation. So trying to understand what is the mechanisms beneath the cell-free DNA release, because for sure with this we will be able to go to the next step. Is this a diagnostic tool for everybody? Carriers of translocation, monogenics? This would be the next step that we will need to cover.
Okay, so we are talking about research, but how about the clinical results? I mean, the reports. Is going to be a report exactly the same as we have in PGT-A, like euploid, aneuploid, transfer yes, transfer no, or how can we make this?
Okay, this is a big change many times, because now we are not saying transfer yes, transfer not. The idea of the non-invasive is just to have a prioritization of the embryos, to rank the embryos, the ones that can be selected for transfer first because they have a higher probability of corresponding to a euploid blastocyst, and the ones that have poorer prognosis. But we observe that this is a trend also in the PGT-A field. You know, everything with the mosaics, with the segmentals. The idea is that some embryos, they are not fully euploid, but still they have some probability of resulting in an ongoing pregnancy. So the idea is in the same way in which the trend is moving in PGT-A to prioritize the embryos. And how we diagnose the embryos, we don't diagnose in the same way as in a trophectoden biopsy. I will talk in detail in my talk on Wednesday, but the way in which we interpret the results of NGS in the culture media is pretty different from the biopsies, because we always refer the result in the culture media to the result that we can observe in the corresponding blastocyst. So we are just a step ahead of what we do with PGT-A, trying to correlate the results, not just what we see, but with the results in the embryo and hopefully with the live birth rates.
Okay, so I have a lab and I would like to start doing this kind of test, embrace the non-invasive pre-implantation testing. How can I make it? I mean, it's easy, it's not that easy.
Well, it's easy to contact us because you can contact with any iGenomics lab around the world, and they will really incorporate the Embrace team in the conversation. So you have support locally in your labs, and your local support can contact us at any time. We can discuss how we can do the validation. It's very important to train the team in your lab. It's easy, but we have some tips that are basic to have the good results. And then after training, we need to do a small validation in each lab to be clear how you work, to adapt the protocol to your daily needs in the lab, and to be sure that you have consistent results, no contamination, high informativity. And if I can say is that if you have a friend, a colleague that is already using Embrace, ask them, because we realize that it's very clear that the best feedback that is going to give you more like clarity about how to incorporate in your lab is commenting with colleagues.
Okay, so you realize that we had a user meeting on Sunday, So what is your feeling about that? Do you think that it is working, people is happy, or what are your take-home messages from that meeting?
Okay, this is a good question because Nasser knows what I'm going to say. So we were very happy. After the user meeting, we had our first user meeting this Sunday, and we are really very thankful to all the customers that decided to join us for the user meeting. They were really sharing very honestly their results, how they have been moving in the process of adopting the technology, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And I think this is really, really very good and very reinforcing. I realized that there is a very nice network among the different people that are starting to be users. And all together, we had very good conclusions on how to make it easier and how to implement for new people that is starting whether to do or not to do. I think we need to keep on doing this because I really need the feedback and the energy from the IVF labs.
Okay. So is there any question on the audience? So if I can summarize a little bit, we do know that in the medicine field, we are going in any field, we are going to non-invasive. We do know that for cancer, we are doing like blood draw and then look for markers and niPGT. And 10 years ago, no, but now it's for every single patient. So I guess that in a few years, the non-invasive PGT-A is going to be a reality. It's now, but it's going to be wider. And Carmen, please let us know just your last message, 30 seconds gold standard message for all the audience.
I will repeat the message that we delivered at the end of the user meeting. So we had the idea, we start with the research, but you, the customer, you have make it real. So this is our really big conclusion.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much and see you in the next session. Thank you. Bye-bye.